everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 5 of Natsume Yujin-Cho, or Natsume's Book of Friends. And, last episode was so good. Last episode was really good. It subverted a lot of my expectations of how the episode was going to go, of how Madara would interact with the yokai that they had to find, and with Natsume not only making yokai friends, as he has his cheerleading squad, he's also making friends in the human realm. But I just wish Natsume could emphasize that he can see spirits, but I get why he can't. But I feel like Natsumi reminds me a little bit of Aladdin, a little bit, where it's like Madara's like the little genie being like, be yourself. And Natsumi's like, no, I don't want them to know I can see ghosts. But I mean, there are obvious reasons why he can't, so I get it. It's just, to me, I feel like it's eventually going to happen at some point that he's gonna have to tell them, and they're gonna have to either believe it or not believe it. But Tanema, like, took it really well, so why not? And Tanema can clearly see spirits, or like the shadows of them, and he's fine with it, so why can't he tell the school council president? I'm sure she would understand, because she's literally seen one before. But I digress. We'll see how that goes. I do want to say a couple things. First, I was updating my anime list, and I was adding this to it, and I noticed that it said season 1 was 13 episodes, and I was like, oh, because the streaming service that I'm watching this on does not delineate between seasons. It's just like, Natsume Yujin-Cho, here's a ton of episodes. And I'm like, but how many is it? So knowing that season 1 technically is 13 episodes is good. Now, my moderators have like a big long stack of Natsume content for me to go through in specific order. They've also done this for me for Psychopaths, because they don't want me to know about certain things till it's time, which I appreciate. So don't worry. My moderators have got me covered. Floor is like, this is one of their favorite shows, so I feel like I'm in very good hands. So I know exactly what I'm dealing with. It'll be a surprise as I get to it, which I'm really excited about. The other thing is that Sunspots pointed out something that I've been making fun of this show, because it seems like RuPaul's Drag Race season 1, where there's like Vaseline over the lens, and it's very like, it's not foggy, but the quality of it, it's kind of like, it just feels like there's a lens over it, or a layer. They pointed out that the streaming service I'm watching this on alongside them only has 480 pixel viewing and frame rate, and I was like, oh shit, no wonder it looks so like foggy. It's literally set at 480. That's the highest it goes. What the heck, streaming service? Could you not get a better copy? Could we not invest in that? I guess not. I guess I should be happy and not complaining because you have it. So I can't really complain, because I do feel like anymore streaming services either have shows or they don't, and I really want them to keep this show. So I'm not gonna bitch anymore about it, but I was like, oh, so that's why it's like that. Although I am pretty optimistic, and I don't want you all to tell me, but I'm sure you all are grinning behind the screens as I say this. I am sure the quality of the animation will, and it's not even the quality of the animation. The quality of the animation is great. It's the quality of the print that is being streamed. I feel like that is going to increase as we go, because we'll have newer seasons. But no, the quality of the animation is fantastic. It's just the print copy that the streaming service has is not the highest quality. I feel like it could be, but I'm not in charge of that company, so that's on them, I guess. But I'm super excited to get into this series. I hope you all are as well. We have a new patron, though, to our philanthropy tier, so I want to go ahead and recognize them along with our other philanthropy tier members, because they donate each month alongside my other patrons to help me do reactions like these. And I'm super appreciative of any supporter that watches my reactions, whether they're on YouTube and they can't afford Patreon, whether they're just doing a $1 tier, whether they're doing the $5 tier to see things a week early, or they're part of the philanthropy tier and they just have some extra bucks that they want to donate to me, and that's so appreciative and super kind of you. So with that in mind, I would give a special shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, to Eric, to Curie, to Lyndon, to Elfreya, to Matthew Palfinier, to Murphew, to Nicholas, to Nameless Monster, to Sunspots, to Shimoyama, to Trails, Translucent Men, as well as Danny Don Mai, Danovan, In Lee 2, and our newest one to the fray, Ichu. So thank you so much for all of your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. So yeah, I'm really excited, y'all. I hope you all are too, but we're not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive right into episode 5 of Natsume Yujin-Cho, Book of Friends, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's see what happens to Natsume and Madara today. Oh my god, that was adorable. So I want to talk about this episode because this episode is probably maybe one of my favorites so far. I know we've had episodes where more happened in it, but I don't know. There was something about the charm of this episode and just the adorableness and again subverting kind of some of our expectations that really this episode was pretty solid and cohesive from end to end, and it went by so fast. I was like, we're already done. When did we start? And so I think that's really interesting, but it's also bringing up some interesting ideas about Reiko, about Madara, about Sasada, and Tanuma, which I just want to bring up. You know, it's checking off a lot of boxes, and the fact that I know now this is a shoujo is really exciting because that makes a lot more sense with the vibe of it. Although, here's the thing: a lot of people think that shoujo are cutesy, girly anime, or that they're certainly chill or vibe. You know what? This is the third shoujo I've had on my channel. The first was Banana Fish. Banana Fish is a shoujo, and it is one of the most intense shows that I've watched on this channel, and it's full-blown shoujo. The other one is Yona of the Dawn, which again, a very intense show at times. So I definitely think that shoujo gets a reputation that it maybe isn't warranted. So I'm all for this being a shoujo. I like that a lot. It definitely makes sense that some of the tropes are a little bit subverted, but I want to talk about this episode. And Madara, who is just like, why are you going through Reiko's things? What are you doing? Why are you going through her things? What are you doing? I maintain my headcanon that Madara had a crush on Reiko. That Madara had a crush on Reiko. He was in love with her. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. I can't imagine why. He's a yokai and she's not. But he's kind of protective of her memories, and he's protective of the spirit of Reiko. And so the only reason he's letting Natsume have her book is because he's her grandson. And so he feels like Natsume has the possibility of maintaining and upholding that spirit of the woman that he loved. That's just my theory. Now, could be proven wrong later, but I think it's interesting that he's kind of like, well, why are you messing with her stuff? What are you doing? You don't have to mess with that. Also, I think what's interesting is that Madara keeps pushing that Reiko is not a nice person and that she's not who Natsume thinks that she is. And I think that's rather interesting. I think that there could be some definite truth to that. I mean, how often do we get compared with relatives? And we're like, oh, I'm not exactly like that person, or I am. I feel really close to Natsume in a certain regard, in the fact that I can understand a little bit of where he's coming from. I don't look like my mother at all. I don't look like my father at all. I look like my dad's dad, my grandfather. I literally have the same face shape as my grandfather. Just put a wig on me and there we go. I literally look like my grandpa. And when I was younger, I was compared to him a lot. Everybody would be like, oh, you're just like your grandfather. You're just like your grandfather. And you're just like your grandfather. Now, obviously, I find personally, unlike Natsume and Reiko, I feel like my grandfather and I do share similar interests. Like, he was a real big movie buff. He liked reading. A lot of my creativity, I think, comes from him because he liked making movies. He would have loved this whole influencer, creative content, things like that. He would have thought that was really cool. And he would have probably had his own channel if he if he knew what to talk about. But I definitely see myself pulling a lot from his spirit because he passed when I was 8 years old. So I was really young when he passed. But we're obviously not the same person. And so I feel for Natsume in this case because I feel like the yokai all compare him to Reiko all the time. And he's like, we're not the same person. And so I feel like Madara, one, wants to keep track of Reiko's memories and make sure that it's known that they're not the same person. But I think also it could subversely be that Natsume discovers he has something in common with his grandmother, even though their personalities seem totally different. And we'll talk about it in this episode. But yeah, I like Madara eating the little watermelon. It's super cute. And then him Pillbug like walking over there to her things that she has. And he's like, Natsume's like, you got some seeds on your mouth. He's like, don't worry about it. What are you doing? He's like, what are you doing with their stuff? And he's like, whatever. And we get confirmation. Like, people have been saying in the comments, or trying to say in the comments, that the memories are coming from Reiko to Natsume. The show finally tells us and confirms what we've been suspecting, or what the comment section has been alluding to. The show finally gives us confirmation that that's what's happening. He's getting to know his grandmother through her memories by knowing the spirits, which is really sweet. I like that he's getting to know who she is, right? And I feel like that's possibly going to influence him later on, with Natsume saying, well, am I like my grandmother, or am I not like her? And what do I do with that? So we have all these books and things, right? All these little trinkets. And he realizes that there's like a book date, oh my God, that she borrowed from the library. I don't even want to think about the library fees. At this point, they're probably like, just keep it. It's not worth paying back the fees. That she forgot to return it. And then we have the ticket from Moriguchi to Kiriganuma. Now, the thing about it is the heart-colored ticket. Yes. The thing about it is Madara makes the point of saying that she just forgot. She had that conversation, she sent them on their way, and she forgot to come back. And Natsume thinks that there's more to it than that there was maybe something else causing her. A part of me was like, does she just have really bad memory, or was something making her lose her memory every time? Was she having was a yokai plaguing her and making her lose her memories? Was Madara making her lose her memories? Why did she keep forgetting all of these things? Was it that she was just that forgetful and didn't, or was it that she was just really apathetic? She could have made these promises. I think that it's going to be interesting as we go through and get to know Reiko more, because it's like, is she really apathetic and she was just saying that to the spirits and then she was like, I don't care anymore? Or was she depressed? Was she going through depression and then she just became indifferent and apathetic? Because if you're depressed, sometimes you go through that where you don't care. And so it's not that you don't want to go do something or you don't have the energy. It's literally that you don't have the energy or motivation and you're like, I can't do it. So I'm like, was she depressed and just looking at the yokai for a temporary fix to that? Was it that she's super forgetful and just forgot to go back and got caught up in, and she could have been, if she was actively creating this book of friends, I don't think there was any malice to her doing it. I don't think there was anything mean-spirited in that she was collecting these names and abandoning these spirits. It could just be that she was caught up in, oh, I have another spirit to go get. Oh, now I found another spirit. Oh, today's a new day, new adventure. Let's go get this other spirit. And she just never went back. I don't know. There's a lot of options that range from her being this villainous character to her just being super forgetful or being depressed or being distracted. So there's a lot of different ideas and options that could be weighed. Maybe Madara was jealous that she went and talked to the spirit and he's like, well, I'll just keep her distracted so she won't ever go back. I don't know. And she just gathered up this book of names and never went back to see any of them. She's a curious character, Reiko is. And I'm going to be curious as we go through this series to see what we learn about her in relation to Natsume, right? Because even though there is some mystery still to Natsume, he's otherwise pretty straightforward, right? We have a pretty good idea about him. So, okay, these two friends, it didn't hit me until this episode, which episode 5 is an episode of revelation. These two guys just need to admit that they need to have a bromance. They just need to admit that they are maybe, there's a possibility. If they decided today that they wanted to be in a relationship, I think they'd both be happy. I think because they quarrel and then they, make up. And I'm sure that, yes, you could just say they're friends. They're just friends and everything. But I was like humor the BL lover in me. I think it could be a thing. I just think it's very coincidental. I think it's all very coincidental that you have these two guys who are fighting and have this big old fight over nothing. And then they're like, I'm not going to talk to you. Well, I'm not going to talk to you either. And then they leave and go their separate ways. And then during the course of this episode, we see two spirits. And before you say anything else, I did say in the reaction that it was like a BL, but I understand the spirits are not bound by a gender. They don't acknowledge gender. If you look up, right before I started this discussion, I went up to check myself. And the name Santo has a male presenting connotation in Japanese, but Mitsuri has a female presenting connotation. So I'm like, okay, fine. You could say that they're not two male yokai that love each other. They don't even identify genders. They just have names, and the names are gendered. Whatever, fine. My point is that the couple of yokai that are used as the example in this episode had a fight, but they love one another, and they finally get together. And you know what? It could be platonic love. I'm not saying that these two boys, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, in the classroom have to go bone each other. I'm not saying that. I just think that there might be some love between them. And it's pretty obvious at this point. And the yokai couple is kind of a representation of that, right? But yeah, so we'll talk about Tanema and Natsumi and Sasada here in a minute. This love triangle that's formed that I'm living for. But I'm just saying, I think that the two human friends that are boys, were very well represented by the yokai spirits as well. They love each other. They should admit it and move on from there. And I just love that Natsumi is like, I don't care about anything that they're talking about, and it all just seems like really random nonsense. And Natsumi's like, I don't know what to tell you. And then Sasada shows up while he drops the plane ticket. Now, or the train ticket. Now, Sasada. I do like Sasada a lot, but I feel like she was a little bit out of her lane in this episode, just a wee bit, because Natsumi clearly, didn't want to tell her about the ticket. Natsumi does not want to admit that he speaks to ghosts. He doesn't want to do that. She very much is trying to wiggle her way in to get to go see them with them. And he's like, no, I really don't want you there because you'll be in the way and you can't see ghosts. So what's the point? But she has seen a ghost now and she's convinced that he can see ghosts and she wants to join in on the fun. And I do respect Sasada to an extent that I understand why she wants to join. And I understand that she's trying to make friends with Natsumi. But you could not be more apparent that Natsumi does not care about her romantically or anything in the slightest. Like, she clearly has a crush on him. He does not have a crush on her. Natsumi, last episode, I was like, I wonder if her and Natsumi could be a couple. No, I don't think so. I think he's going to friend zone her hard this entire series. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he doesn't friend zone her later on, but right now he is friend zoning her. And you know who he's not friend zoning? Tanuma. Because she tries to go with him and he's like, oh yeah, I just picked it up. And she's like, you're a liar. And she sees right through him. But man, what a wingman. What a best bro friend. What a guy. Tanuma just shows up, and because at first he's like, well, why do you care so much? And I'm like, she's kind of flirting with Natsumi. Like, I think she likes Natsumi and she's flirting with him and trying to like go in. But here's the thing, girl. Like, I appreciate you liking Natsumi. I'm rooting for you, but you got to read the room. And Natsumi doesn't want you involved in this, so back off. And he wanted to go take care of this. Respect his wishes, respect his space. Consent is a thing. And wait until, maybe next time. But she tries to butt in and tries to force herself into the situation and to go with him when he really doesn't want her to go. And as the bus shows up, then, oh my God, Tanuma comes along and is like, oh, hey, you dropped something. And she's like, dropped what? And then when he taps him on the shoulder and is like, hey man, and he's just like, go on and get on the bus. I was like, oh, bitch, you're the best friend ever. Now, you can tell me that Tanuma and Natsumi are just friends and that Sasada and Natsumi are in game. You can make that argument, and I won't deny you. I won't say you're wrong. I definitely can see that happening. But did my BL shipper heart in that moment want to ship Tanuma and Natsumi 1,000 times over? Yes, because guess what? Because here's the thing. If Tanuma had grabbed Natsumi, what I thought was going to happen when he told her to go over there was he was going to grab Natsumi and get on the bus with him. That would have been like a love triangle situation. And I've been like, now wait a minute. Natsumi just said for you, he didn't want her to go with him. He wanted to do it himself. And I would have been like, show what we doing. But he doesn't do that. Tanuma's like, hey, clearly Natsumi wants to go by himself. Get on the bus. I'll distract her. That's a bitchin' ass move. That's an amazing move. I was like, Tanuma, you son of a bitch, you're amazing. You're doing great, sweetie. I love you for this. You're letting your man go off and do his own thing. And then at the end, when Natsumi was waiting by the window and he's like, hey man, thanks. I was like, what? He leaves Sasada. He's like, yeah, whatever. But Tanema. It's like, I'm like, and the thing about it is, that's hilarious, is that he is totally fine. Natsumi is totally fine befriending Tanema and being like, hey man, you can't see spirits. They're just kind of little faint squiggly lines to you, but let's be chums. Meanwhile, Sasada's like, hey, I also can see ghosts that are kind of faint squiggly lines too. I actually can see ghosts better than Tanema. And Natsumi's like, yeah, I don't want to involve you because, I don't want you to know I can see ghosts because nobody else can. And Tanema's standing right there. So it's just like, my heart is torn. There's a part of me that last episode, I wanted to ship Natsumi and Sasada and be like, oh, I'm rooting for you guys. And in this episode, I was like, no, I'm actually rooting for Tanema and Natsumi. And now it's just a triangle. And then a part of me, as he was leaving on the bus and it was leaving Tanema and Sasada behind, there was another part of me that was like, is the show going to put Sasada and Tanema together and make them a ship and Natsumi's just by himself? Because Natsumi kind of gives me like an ace vibe to him, which I can relate to. He kind of has an ace vibe to him, which I like that about Natsumi's character. I like it. So I'm kind of just wondering if Natsumi's going to end up by himself and then like Tanema and Sasada might end up together in their quest to help. It's kind of like Naruto. You have Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, and you have Natsumi and Tanema and Sasada. So I don't know how that's going to end up. I'm just going to be very curious to see how it ends up happening in the show. But Tanema is a man among men. Like, what a best friend. What a bro. I love it. And then the moment that she like turns back to get onto Tanema, he's already gone. Love it. Love it. So I will say one thing I kind of I was really addicted to when I was younger were like photo books of abandoned like train stations, abandoned parking lots, abandoned malls, abandoned like theme parks. When Hurricane Katrina came through the US way back in 2004, I was in high school. And because I'm that old, and there were photographers that Hurricane Katrina like made people in certain theme parks like have to abandon it, and a lot of photographers came in years later and took photos of it. And I was always fascinated by that. And around the time all of this was going on, there were a lot of amusement parks and theme parks shutting down because like the 90s economic bubble had burst. And that's around the time that Spirited Away came out, the Studio Ghibli film. And that film has like a tiny little subplot where it's talking about like the economy abandoning theme parks, and that ties into the world. So I was really fascinated by it. So the moment we come to this abandoned train station, I was enthralled. I was like, oh, I love this. I love just like the grass growing up through the cracks. There's the flower at the end before the end credits. It's like dusty and abandoned, and just the atmosphere of something created by man that's been just left behind, and just seeing like interacting with it feels like you're in a ghost town. That part was so cool to me, and I really, really enjoyed that. I liked it. Felt very Spirited Away getting into that, and I feel like the mangaka is tapping into like the concept of these abandoned infrastructures and showing how there's still like spirituality and like presence tied to them. So yeah, they managed to go over and they find the spirit Santo sitting on the being. He looks like a capybara. Is that what it's called? It's like a little capybara. What is it? Capybara. I'm gonna look it up. Capybara. Yeah, he's a capybara. He looks like a little they're a big rodent basically. But that's exactly what he looks like, is a capybara. I was trying to think of it during the reaction. Now look, with Santo, if you told me he was really annoying and you didn't like him, I can't understand that, because at the very beginning when he was really oblivious and it hit you that, oh no, he's just really kind of simple. I was like, oh, I don't know. And that voice, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about him. But the more the episode went on and the more endearing and adorable he became, the voice became more endearing. And I was like, oh, I kind of like this. He's really precious. And I'm like, oh, and he's trying his hardest. He's just frustratingly simple and doesn't know what else to do. And Natsume's like, ah. What got me throughout this whole thing was the fact that they had to walk to the other train station. Because yeah, he thinks that Reiko is Natsume. He spins him around. If Sasada had traveled with them and saw Natsume just being spun in the air, she'd been like, "Oh sure, no spirits involved, huh? Sure, right? You don't know what's going on, huh? Right?" I wish you could have seen that, but I don't know. And he's asking the sensei, and then of course Madara's like, "No, he's not a bad guy." I think that's interesting. Madara. What's interesting is he's not a bad guy, so I can't do anything. I find that interesting. I don't know if maybe Madara, was he tasked with protecting Natsume, or did Reiko say, "You're going to protect my descendant or something, or you're going to protect me or my family whenever we need your help," and that's why he's there? He would never admit that, I don't think, but the fact that he does nothing because he says, "Oh, he's not a bad guy, so I'm not going to worry about it. You do it yourself." But there's another part of me that thinks that Madara is trying to get Natsume to take charge and be his own person and not rely upon Madara, because I feel like Reiko, for all intents and purposes, she acted on her own. She was very independent, was very self-serving, and she's like, "Oh, I'll take care of it, don't worry." And Natsume's not like that. Natsume's like, "Oh, hey, Madara, you're really strong. You protect me." And Madara's like, "At some point, you're going to have to take charge and fight your own battles." And he's like, "You have the Book of Friends. You have their names. You can use them. Why aren't you doing these things that Reiko instantly picked up and latched onto?" So that's going to be interesting as we move forward, too, because it seems like Madara's trying to, like, kick him out of the nest. And then, yeah, on the train tracks, we have the two frogs facing each other. Everything's like, there's just couples, right? Just couples. And then he's like, "Well, you smell like her because you're her grandson." But also, I think because he's been messing around with her stuff, her scent is probably on him as well. Even though I know that some of the yokai can sense him because they're related. And she said she'd go with you. Yeah. And so McCurry was all mad and said, "I'll never forgive you." And Reiko was like, "Well, this is bad. Okay." And like she tried to, make things right. And he gives the name back, and that's when he has the memory. And she's like, "Do you like this yokai named McCurry?" And he's like, "I love McCurry." And oh my god, so their dynamic, McCurry and Santo's dynamic, are like, it's one of my, I have many shipping tropes that I like, but there is a couple dynamic that I feel I probably see this shipping dynamic the most in real life. More so than fiction. I see this probably in reality more than I do in fiction. And it's where one partner in the relationship is kind of maybe like really empathetic, really compassionate, maybe not the most intelligent, or a little bit more simple. And I'm going to say that in the most polite, best way possible. But they're really super chill, and they're very compassionate and chill and easygoing. And then the other person in the relationship is very smart, but they're very like, like, "What are you doing?" Like hyper energy and like just flailing high energy all the time. And then the anchor person is like, "Let's calm down." And they're like, "Fine, but what are you doing?" Like that is literally the dynamic I see so often. And the moment we met McCurry, I was like, "Oh my god, I love." Also, I realized I put Mitsuri instead of McCurry down for name meaning. I want to see McCurry is a female name too, right? Cool. And it translates. What does it translate to? It's a fruit reality, truth, or actuality, and arrive. Interesting. But yeah, so I love the dynamic between Santo and McCurry. And I like that Reiko's face is exactly like Natsume. Reiko, again, Natsume is his grandmother without the hair, right? And I love that she's like, do you remember what your fight was about? Do you know? And the more he can't give her an answer, the more frustrated she appears to be, where she's just like, "You don't really know? Like, what is it? What's happening?" And then he's like, "Well, what should I do, Reiko?" And she's like, "Well, where is he now? Let's go find him." And then she's like, "Okay, I'll go with you." And then she's like, "Let's meet here tomorrow." And then she never came back. She didn't keep her promise. And when she says whenever Natsumi says, I'm sure she had a reason for not coming, we zoom in onto Madara's face, and Madara's just like has this shit-eating little cat grin. Is like, I know secrets, but I'm not telling you. I'm like, son of a bitch. What? So the question is, did she legit just forget? Or did she want Santo to eventually go solve his own problems, and she thought that if she didn't come back, because here's what I thought. I wondered if Madara talked to her and was like, hey, I mean, why go back? You've told him what to do. You've given him the incentive, so let him go solve his problem for himself. And she was like, okay, and then did never go back, and then he never solved the problem. So maybe that was it. I don't know. It was just very interesting that it immediately went back to Madara at that moment. And the interesting thing is that both of them were waiting for each other. And Natsumi's like, well, let me take care of what my grandmother couldn't finish. And Madara's like, are you sure? Can't we go home? And when he said he'd come back tomorrow, I was like, oh, that's exactly what she said. And I'm sure Madara would try to like get him out of coming back. So he's like, well, fine, we'll go now. Madara's like, oh, you took this on too easily. My thing was, why didn't Madara turn into his giant form? Because he grabbed Santo and Natsumi when the tree spirit, the earth spirits were attacking. Why didn't he do that from the start? Why didn't he just turn into his dragon cat form, put Santo on the back with Natsumi, and then run off to wherever they were going? They could have gotten there like half the time. Maybe they were trying to be cautious in case if there were like evil spirits afoot. But I was like, for a cat bitching this much, I'm like, you could have waited and you could have just easily gone there quicker, unless it was going to take up too much energy. Maybe it was going to take up too much energy and he wanted to conserve it in case they were attacked. I don't know. But in any case, he's like, when Reiko didn't show up, you should have gone yourself. And Madara said that himself. So it's like, interesting. I feel like he tried to push it to where she wouldn't go. So the earth spirits are interesting. I don't know why the berries like made him flinch or anything, if the berries were actually toxic, and Madara's like, you shouldn't be eating those, but he did anyway because he's simple. But the trees attacking them was pretty creepy, right? Very creepy indeed. The idea of different spiritual things getting possessed by evil spirits. I'm like, wait, what? So that's something to keep track of as well. Also, Madara asking, it truly is a question of whether you find it cute or obnoxious. And he's referring to Santo. I'm like, I feel like some other people say that about you, Madara. So, pot calling the kettle black. But yeah, he's like, what will you say when you see McCurry? And he's like, something. I also like that Madara was bitching about how simple Santo was, and then the next time we see Madara, he's riding on top of Santo. He's literally trying to freeload off of him the whole way there. I'm like, are you freaking serious? And he's like, maybe we shouldn't go through with this. And Natsumi's like, nope, let's go. But yeah, so the tree spirits attack. They managed to get away. I thought it was kind of creepy how the mist rolled in and like they started to lose their footing and he had to jump across the bridge before it completely disappeared. I thought that was creepy. And then apparently these earth spirits, they can inhabit creatures in the yokai and make them bigger or transform. So it went from being this little tadpole to being this giant ass catfish. It looked like a Pokemon evolution is what it essentially was. And it wanted the Book of Friends. That's interesting to me because McCurry, once McCurry gets down to their original form and are with Santo, they don't care at all about the Book of Friends. Their name's not even in the Book of Friends. So the fact that evil spirits possessed it, or these earth spirits possessed it, and they wanted the Books of Friends, seems like it's telling something. Like maybe that there is a presence of the earth spirits or some kind of benevolent, not benevolent, but malevolent spirit that is trying to get a hold of the Book of Friends. Interestingly enough. And of course, Madara does his best to not let Natsumi and his book get taken. I do love the catfish design. I think it's really cool. And then Santo catching the Book of Friends and not letting the catfish get it. Now, for a hot second, I was like, are we getting into some like tentacle weirdness with this, but luckily that didn't end up happening. I'm glad it didn't. And so, yeah, he's like, McCurry, it's me. And then they end up, Madara ends up getting it to where the fish goes back to its normal size. And then when we see it, it's just this little tadpole. And he's like, what are you doing, idiot? I love their dynamic. It's so cute. They're so precious. And then McCurry is like, I'm mad because Reiko took his name and he let it happen and he wasn't mad about it. So it's just a simple little quarrel. He's like, don't you have any pride in Natsume? He's like, really? That's what this was about? He's like, but I have my name back, so it's all fine now. And then he says, Natsume, look closer. And it's like, yeah, they're not really just fighting. That's like, you can look closer and see Santo blushing. That's their love language. They just fight like that, and that's how it is for them. It's so precious, so cute. I love these yokai getting together and having little relations. It's adorable. And then, of course, the next day, before the next day, we need to back up a little bit. Madara's like, oh, you're still going through her things, aren't you? Do you believe there's a special reason she didn't keep her promise? And he says she just forgot. He says that's the kind of person she was. I feel like there's some bitterness there, too. So it is possible maybe that Madara was mad because she just forgot. Maybe she put him in the shrine and just forgot about him, but he loved her, so he took it personally. Maybe. I don't know. He's like, that's just the kind of person that she was. And Natsume's like, well, I don't believe that. He says, well, then what about all these books she left? They're there because she didn't return them, right? See? And then when he holds one of them up and opens it, all of these things fall out, like notes and tickets. And he's like, these are all things she forgot about. I'm sure she had a very important reason. That's the way that he says, but I'm sure she had a very important reason. Like, and his little eyes get all squinty. I was like, oh, Madara, you beast. Like, yeah, just trying to make Natsume understand how his grandmother was. He's like, Reiko-san, why were you like this? He doesn't say that, but it's like, So then he sees Sasada. And Sasada's like, look, your friends they're besties again. They're back to looking at, what does it say? Paradise Magazine. They're back to looking at magazines of ladies. Sure, compensate. She's like, they made up. They're besties again. They're like, that's great. She's like, well, what was the big deal yesterday? I don't get it. And that's when he's like, oh, it must be because they're good friends. Oh my God. Sure, Jan, just good friends. And she's like, oh, well, what did you see? And I do feel like, you know, romantic jokes aside, I feel like Natsume does kind of, he wants to have friendships like that. Like, he wants to have relations with people like those two classmates that he have, like the two yokai has. Like, he wants to have that type of connection with people. And Reiko, for all intents and purposes that he knows, wasn't able to have that connection. So I want to root for Natsume to have that same type of friendship that those guys have. And I'm like, on the one hand, Sasada wants to develop that friendship with him, but he won't let her. Because she's like, well, what happened? Let's develop a friendship. And he's like, oh, never mind. I just remembered I have to go somewhere. I can't talk to you. You're a woman. I know that's not the reason, but I just think it's so funny that, you know, she wants to actively be his friend. He just said, man, they're good friends. I wish I had a friendship like that. And she's like, hi, I'm right here. And he's like, wait, never mind. I gotta go tell someone thanks. Bye. And just completely leaves her. And instead waits by the window where they made their friendship pact. And he's like, friends, huh? And that's when he sees Tanuma come over. And he's like, thanks for yesterday. And Tanuma's like, oh, well, you look like you were in a pinch. And they're like, I'm like, why do I want to ship you two so badly? Like the way that Natsume looks at Tanuma is so soft and intimate. And then he looks at Sasada and he's like, I don't know. I was like, what? Why? I mean, I'm not mad at it. It's just hilarious. It's like he just wants to be friends so badly with Tanuma. And Sasada's over there like, I'm just chopped liver. And then, yeah, the two birds flying away. The two birds flying away together. Like, what? Like, this was the most romantic episode so far without intentionally being romantic. Like, are you kidding me? And then, yeah, the little flower. And here's the thing. There's the little flower blooming beside it, but then there's also a little bud next to it, meaning that there'll be two blooms side by side at some point. Oh, I'm all about it. I love it. This episode was so precious. I absolutely loved it. It was adorable. I need more. And I cannot wait for next episode, but the whole stuff with Reiko and Madara and Natsumi is interesting. I like it. I wish that Natsumi would just let Sasada be his friend, but he doesn't want to. And then him and Tanama are getting closer, which I have no objections to at all. So I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but I also hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of Natsume's Book of Friends. Natsume Yujin-Cho. Bye!